Countdown.
All right, we're ready to go, Sarah.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Here we are sitting in our homes, welcoming you to the annual meeting. We were really hoping that we would be in the parking lot at St. John's under a big tent, but here we are, and we're just glad you're here and glad we have the technology to be able to assemble the neighborhood. We do hope this is our last virtual ECA annual meeting. So I'm Sarah Crowder. I've been president of the ECA for the last 2 years. And since this is a virtual meeting and a lot of you are attending and there are a lot of opportunities for tech problems, we enlisted a pro to help us, in addition to West, make sure things go smoothly. So Jason, I'm going to turn to you, Jason Graffis, who is our tech host for the meeting. And he's going to walk you through how the meeting is going to work and especially how the Q&A is going to work. Jason?
Hello, friends. Just a couple of things. Since this is a webinar, those of you who are attendees, some of you already noticed that you are all muted by default. That was just to sort of keep everything neat and clean, and we'll get through the meeting quickly that way. The panelists will be on video, and we'll spotlight them as they present, so you'll be able to see them. The chat is set so that you can chat with hosts and panelists. So if you have an issue, if something's wrong with the meeting or something looks weird, you can put that in the chat just to let us know. If you have a question that you'd like answered, you'll see a Q&A feature down at the bottom. You can click on that. You can type your question in. We're going to save all of those until the end, unless I notice one that's really easy. I might type a response to you if it's just something tech related or whatever. But we'll save all those questions until the very end, and then we'll answer them there. So I think that should be it. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah.
Thank you. So we want to thank all of you for joining the meeting and supporting the board, and mostly for your support of the neighborhood. It's been an honor to be the president of the ECA for the last 2 years. And this is my last year as president, my last opportunity to preside over the annual meeting. So you may not be surprised that I have a couple of things I'd like to say to our board and to our neighborhood. I have been looking at past newsletter issues this summer back to the 1970s, and I've been struck by a couple of things. One is the incredible continuity in Elizabeth, not just of issues, although they do seem to cycle round and round. The Independence Park, transportation, sidewalks, housing types, development, hospitals. I'll say light rail is a new one, although the trolley's not, because there was a streetcar in this neighborhood over 100 years ago. But the continuity is in the people. There are, just looking through the newsletter, hundreds of people over the years who have served this neighborhood as volunteers and as board members. And they've ranged in age from their early 20s and 30s, people just starting their families and careers, to people who are more seasoned. And the people who founded the ECA in the 1970s, Leslie Winter, Don Carroll, DeWitt Crosby, they were young professionals, and they worked with longtime residents, many of whom were original residents. And they decided this neighborhood was worth saving because it was on the way down. They spent hours of volunteer time, talent, and passion because, like all of you, the way we feel now, Elizabeth is important and we love living here. Many of those people are still around. So I joined the board, the first time in 1983. I was a young lawyer, just got married. I wasn't a parent yet, and I was a brand new resident, just like lots of our neighbors. And what I'm trying to say is, like all of you, we are all part of the legacy of this neighborhood, board members and neighbors. We understand what makes Elizabeth special is the people who choose to live here on the edge of Uptown, with our sidewalks, trees, trolley path, kids in front yards, the oldest park in the city, sports stadiums, small businesses, and a really special spirit. And even when we've differed over the years or differ now, we have stayed together as neighbors and friends. So I want to thank you all And whether you're helping assemble the pumpkin wall, it's fun, handing out treats at trunk or treat, collecting recycling, bugging our city leaders, serving on a committee, or serving on the board, what you do is important, and this neighborhood is worth it. So now I'd like to introduce the board, and I'm going to start with Evan. Evan, can you give a little wave? There's Evan, took his glasses off. Evan has been vice president for 2 years. He has been the chair of the Land Use Development Committee. We call them the Luddites, the LUDs. He has been incredibly valuable to me as a colleague and a team member on this board. And you'll hear about the busy year the LUD committee has had. Danielle, where's Danielle? There she is up in my left-hand corner. Danielle came on as treasurer last year, and we are thrilled she's agreed to be nominated again next year. Thank you, Danielle. She's a QuickBooks professional, and she has done just the best job at getting our finances managed. Thank you so much, Danielle. Danielle also has a passion for the environment, and she has started the new Environmental Sustainability Committee. That's a mouthful, and you'll hear more about that later. She's already got a lot of volunteers, and it's a great way to volunteer. So Eric Davis, there's Eric, purple shirt. Eric is past president of ECA 2 presidents ago before Paul Shipley. He stepped up as chair of the Transportation Committee when Jessica Meyer, who was the chair, moved out of state last November. And Eric has got a deep knowledge of the neighborhood. He's recruited a lot of volunteers for his committee. And Eric, you've been a really wonderful advisor for me, and I thank you very much. And Lisa Yagla, I can't say enough about Lisa. Okay, Lisa, do I see you? Maybe everyone sees Lisa and I don't. There she is. Hey, Lisa. Lisa was our social chair again through what we all know was a difficult year, and I'm just not going to talk about it a lot. It was a difficult year, but she was responsible for the Together sign on the pumpkin wall. That was her brainchild, and she really worked hard with John Short and his committee. The Merry Meander was Lisa's way of making darn well sure that we had something to celebrate last December. And Lisa, I think you've started a tradition. Thank you. It was fabulous. Lisa is stepping down as social chair, but she's going to stay on the LUD committee. And being Lisa, she has volunteered to be nominated as secretary for next year. And I did not say you need to have your head examined. We're just thrilled that she's doing that. And Lisa is also, as you heard, responsible for the PowerPoint that will accompany this meeting. I don't know how she does it all, but boy, Lisa, you were so appreciated. So next to West Bryant, he's our communications guru, and yay, he's the nominee for president. West has been invaluable on this board. He's been a leader, not just with his tech expertise, but with his good sense of humor, his communication skills, and he's really saved us the last couple of years. And he, with Lisa and Evan and Jason, has spent hours planning this meeting. Paul Freeman, you're next. Paul is in charge of trees and beautification. You probably all know he's a landscape architect, and his expertise has been a huge value for us and the board in this neighborhood. If you notice the repaired lights on the trolley path, you can thank Paul. And he's also served on the ad hoc committee for Independence Park and helped save a whole bunch of trees. So John McBride is not here. For some reason, John chose Mick Jagger in Panther Stadium tonight over us. Can you believe it? I don't know if he was at the Thirsty Beaver last night with Nick or not. But John is a great writer. He's creative. He's patient. He gets the newsletter out 4 times a year with volunteers, makes it look easy. And because he's with Nick instead of us, Lauren is going to give his report. Rob Zabel's not here either. He is the chair of the 8K committee, and he's agreed to do that for another year. Y'all know it's an enormous undertaking, just all the logistics plus the sponsors. And Rob is also at the Rolling Stones concert tonight. And even though the 8K was virtual last year, it was a real success. And we are hoping and praying that we'll be live this year. Ann Lambert, let's see, where's Ann? There's Ann waving. Hey, Ann. Ann has been an integral part of the committee that worked on the Hawthorne Bridge streetcar issues that are ongoing. But she's been fabulous on that. She lives across the bridge in Sunnyside area of the neighborhood, and she's also helped out with social events. Ann has strong ties to the nonprofit community in Charlotte, and she brings a lot of knowledge to the board. Thanks, Ann. And then here's Reagan, Judge Miller, Your Honor. Reagan retired as a district court judge in summer 2020, and for some reason agreed to be on this board right afterwards. And we are so happy he did. Reagan's lived in the community for years. He knows the community well, and he has spearheaded our efforts to improve the situation with people being discharged from Mercy Hospital ER. And he'll tell you more about that. Lauren Gomez, there's Lauren. Lauren came on the board last spring to fill a vacancy, and she is chair of membership, which is a reconstituted committee. Lauren has great ideas. She is so creative and has a ton of initiative, and she has hit the ground running as our membership numbers are showing. Thank you, Lauren. Last but not least is Sherry Swarthout. I hope my Siri doesn't light up. Sherry lives on Sunnyside, and she is an important connection there, especially with the pending changes to that part of our neighborhood from the proposed light rail Silver Line station. She's the AD at Queens, and when we can be more active with in-person events, we are looking forward to calling on your expertise, Sherry. I'd like to recognize Taylor Robbins, who resigned this year. He was the general manager at Earl's, and he moved to Texas during the spring. And also Yen Dong and Phil Grennan, who filled the secretary positions at different times, and they also moved out of the neighborhood. So we lost four board members last year to people moving. Now, I just want to say thank you all. Thank you all. Again, recognize Wes, Lisa, and Evan, who were key in planning this meeting. Actually planned it twice because we thought we would be outside, and here we are inside, virtual. So for the rest of this meeting, you're going to hear from our committee chairs. Then I'll present the slate of officers for 21-22, explain the voting procedure. We will also have opportunity for Q&A, as you heard. And then West will be sending email out after the meeting about the voting procedure. I also want to recognize our guest at this meeting. Cliff Settlemeyer lives on Clement. He's the president of the Historic Elizabeth Neighborhood Foundation, referred to by its acronym of HENIF. And Cliff will be making a presentation later in the evening, so you'll see him then. Larkin Eggleston is our city council rep. Larkin's not able to be here right now, but he's going to be joining later and will be presenting. And then I want to move to Officer Lila Beimel, who is our community police officer. We are so thrilled that she can be with us. So with that, we're going to start the reports and turn to you, Lila. So if you can turn on your video, that would be awesome. And here she is outside in your audio. And we're going to start our PowerPoint so we can go to her report. The floor is yours, Lila.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, I'm outside. I'm currently in my progress of getting pulled to work, one of the many events going on in this city. So once I'm done with you all, I'll be pulled in a different direction. But just wanted to touch base with you guys about, the crime trends that have occurred in your neighborhood in the last year. Overall, I'm pretty pleased. You have this little snapshot up on that slide reference last year. It's hard to compare anything to last year due to COVID because we were at an all-time low across the city for crime. So the fact that there's some slight upticks here or there is I'm pretty pleased with it. Especially I went back and looked at 2018 and we're still looking pretty good overall. But just to touch base, just the Providence Division alone answers almost 36,000 calls for service a year. And of that, about 1,400 came from your neighborhood, which overall only ended up in 220-ish actual criminal reports. And I'm pretty pleased with that. So I hope you all, can breathe easy with that compared to a lot of parts of the city and even other areas around you. You guys still look pretty good compared to them. So I appreciate you all reaching out. Let me know of community issues that you have, and I hope that you continue to do so, and I will address them accordingly. And I hope that we can continue to just keep your neighborhood looking pretty good overall. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
If we do, we'll put them in the Q&A and get those answers. Get those answers from you later so you can get to your event. I hope you're at the concert at the stadium. You probably can't tell us where you are. So
I am not at that one, but I did get told you get to do a different one, just not at Bank of America. And I'm pretty pleased with that. They're expecting a rather large crowd.
They'll be rowdy too. We have some people there. Thank you, Lila. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
So now let's move on to Danielle Kleinrichard. And Danielle is the treasurer, and then we'll go through our committee report. So Danielle, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to go through the financials for this past fiscal year in 2 slides. The first slide you see here is the balance sheet. And just to highlight 2 things on the balance sheet is that we do have money in the bank. So we do have upwards of $191,000 in the bank, with the majority of that resting in an interest-bearing savings account. That's the balance there. And the second item to point out is the liability on the books. This is a restricted fund. It's for specifically the purchase of to fund and buy trees for the beautification committee. And this has been funded by individual contributions from neighbors. So that I know we planted some trees this year, and this is the balance left to continue planting trees where needed. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. And on this slide is the revenue and expenses. So jumping to the bottom line, we did have a loss of $7,600. And to put that into perspective, this is the second year without a full 8K race. And which in a typical year when we'd have an in-person race, we would net about $14,000. And so this year with a virtual race, we did net around $6,700. So that's fantastic. But we do have a negative this year on the books. And 2 other items under expenses, the one-time expenses, just to point those out. As Sarah had mentioned, we did have the trolley path lights repaired. So that was a large expense. And the donation was made to the Second Harvest Food Bank. And that was part of Elizabeth Care's donation that I think Second Harvest Fund was one of the charities chosen to give money to. And that was a donation we made back in December. And so that's the high level of the fiscal or the balance sheet and the profit and loss report. If anybody has any specific questions that they would like, please put them in the Q&A, and I would be happy to answer if you want any more specifics on any numbers. And then next slide, I will segue into my report about the new committee that we're forming. And I wanted to start this committee, an environmental committee. I chose myself as president or chair, but if anybody, I'm always looking for more volunteers. If anybody wants to chair or co-chair this committee, you are welcome. I have had a number of neighbors reach out to me that will be joining the committee, and we are looking for more people. And I will put my phone number and email in the chat room if you want to reach out to me directly. But basically for this committee, we're going to restart Recycles Day, and we'll want to do a yearly neighborhood cleanup day. And then the third item is what I'm calling the Trash Ambassador Program. And I envision this program as neighbors taking a pledge to pick up trash all year long. You can maybe come in at, a bronze, like a bronze ambassador, and maybe commit to picking up trash, once a quarter, or maybe you're like a superstar and you want to pick up trash weekly. And that the neighborhood, we would provide a trash pickup kit, a grabber, bags, and gloves for you to do so. And so it'll be on the honor system, but just to get the neighborhood involved in keeping our neighborhood clean. So that is my report. I'm going to pass it off to Reagan Miller, and he is going to talk about Mercy Hospital and the ER discharges.
Thank you, Danielle. Shortly after I became a member of the board, Sarah approached me about becoming involved in a controversy with Mercy Hospital about the fact that patients that were being discharged, particularly late at night or early in the morning, were being escorted down the emergency room ramp. And for those of you who know that area, or those of you who don't know that area, the emergency room entrances has a ramp that comes out onto 5th Street. And right across the street from the entrance to the emergency room are a number of residential places. And many of the people living along 5th Street had already contacted Sarah complaining about the fact that some of these discharged patients were coming onto their property, onto their porches, sleeping on the porches, sleeping in their lawns, engaging in other disruptive behavior, and which in some cases called for the police to become involved, and criminal charges sometimes were filed, sometimes not. So Sarah had already had a relationship with one of the officials over at Mercy, and we had a few phone conversations. We tried to get a representative from a roof above to become involved and to offer services to some of these discharged patients. And our request was that instead of releasing patients onto 5th Street, that they be allowed to use the front entrance, which is on Vale Avenue, so that they could go over, which about a block away, and catch a city bus. Well, they refused to do that. So we had more conversations. I sent a letter to their legal counsel and detailing about 9 incidents that had happened in about a 6-month period. And she gave me a response to that. And I won't go into detail what a response was, but it was not satisfactory. So I wrote another letter, and another member of their general counsel's office contacted us, and we had a actual Zoom meeting about the concerns. And long story short, where we are right now, the issue has not been resolved. The last comment they made was that they would take the proposed solution of opening up their front entrance, because they close it at 8 o'clock at night, and determine whether or not it is feasible for them to start releasing emergency room patients through that door as opposed to the 5th Street entrance. So that's where we are right now. And a lot of kudos should go to Sarah for staying on top of this issue. Hopefully, we will get a resolution that satisfies everybody. I am now going to turn it over to, oh man, I forgot who I'm turning it over to.
Rob Zabel, but it's really Wes Bryant.
Oh, yes. That's why it's confusing to me. When you retire, you get confused easily.
That's it, Reagan. That's it.
Thanks, Reagan.
Thank you, Reagan. Thanks.
As formerly mentioned, I'm Wes Bryant. I'm making Rob's report for him this evening as he is not able to join us. So Rob is the 8K race chair, and I think this coming year will be his 10th year as the committee chair for the Elizabeth 8K. So when you see Rob, tell him thank you for his long and distinguished service. This year we did have an 8K back in May, and despite the fact that it was virtual, we still had good participation, great help from our sponsors and partners, and we were able to donate a portion of our proceeds to the Elizabeth Cares initiative, which you heard a little bit about earlier, and that was to really help local nonprofits respond to the pandemic. I think Sarah mentioned previously that we really hope that we can have a more traditional 8K road race in the next calendar year at some point. And Rob's going to be working real hard on that. He wanted to do it this year, but it just didn't work out due to the COVID-19 thing. So he also wanted to make sure that everyone knew the tremendous work that his race committee has put in this year and in prior years too, including Tommy Franklin, Lisa Landrum, Marshall Lindsay, Brian Rubens, and of course Rob. And jump over to the next slide for me, please. And last but certainly not least, please take a minute and peruse through all the awesome race sponsors and our partners. Many of these are local Elizabeth businesses. All of them are, I think, pretty well known, and we really appreciate their support for their sponsorship this year and in prior years. And I think that's all for these slides. I'll hand it over to Lauren Gomez. Thank you.
Hi, Lauren Gomez here. And in the membership period that just ended, we had 190 household memberships. So looking to grow that number in 2022. Next slide. So we do have an annual dues increase to $30 a household, up from $20. And that change does not start until January 1st. So you can actually join now to stay at the $20 level, and that'll get you through the end of 2022. And the senior does move from $10 to $15, and same deal. You can join now for $10 and then stay at that level until 2022. And we do have a new membership designation, Young Professional, for $15 for households 25 and under. So please help us spread the word. And then the membership enrollment period is changing to align with the calendar year. And we think this will help alleviate some confusion about when memberships expire and when to renew. And you do need to re-enroll. So at the end of December in 2022, your membership will be expired and you'll have to get a new one. Next slide, please. So here's just a summary of the table about the changes that will be made. Again, if you join now, you get a few bonus months and your membership is good through the end of next year. Next slide. And we do have some membership gifts. We have a Liz stickers and magnets, and we have some static clings also. And if you've already joined or you're joining tonight or this week, you can email membership at Elizabeth Community to get that. Or we have 3 pickup locations in the neighborhood, 2304 East 5th, they're out there right now, 2050 Greenway, or 708 Sunnyside Avenue. And all those are going to be on the front porches, and you can pick them up if you've already joined. Please get one, or if you're joining this week, you can come anytime during the week and pick those up on the front porches. Next slide. So you do have to have a membership to vote, and there's 2 ways to join. So you can scan the top QR code right there, or go to elizabethcommunity.com if you haven't joined this period, or you can pick up a paper form at 2050 Greenway And you can leave that completed form with your check in the basket on the front porch in Sarah's house. And then grab your sticker or window cling while you are there. So please contact me with any questions, and you can scan the bottom for some more Q&As. Thank you. And then on to Lisa.
Hello, I wanted to recap last year. So I've been social chair for 2 years, which happens to align with a global pandemic when everyone was supposed to be socially distanced and isolated. Terribly ironic for a social committee. So we did have a couple events though. We did manage to pull off the pumpkin wall. We found a new site at the corner of Laurel and Greenway. And we got some letters and some pumpkins, and we had a really great event. Really kicked off the fall last year, and it left me inspired to find a way to come together at the holidays as well, knowing that our traditional holiday party wasn't going to work with distancing regulations. So we had the Merry Meander, which I thought was a fun way to get the whole neighborhood together and really crisscross the whole neighborhood and see the diversity of the neighborhood. And unfortunately, the Easter egg hunt and the progressive dinner were cut due to COVID. And as Danielle mentioned, funding of the social events was limited. So those events didn't happen. But for the new board year, 2021, 2022, we have the pumpkin wall set. So we have the same location. The lot has sold, but the new neighbors are already awesome and have given us access to the lot. And so we're really excited. Pumpkin wall is on, and the construction schedule is here. Construct the wall on the 24th. We'll do the same pickup of pumpkins, carve the pumpkins, bring the pumpkins back like last year. We'll have the lighting ceremony on Friday the 29th. We'll leave the wall lit for 2 nights through Halloween. And then we always love help with taking down the wall and throwing away the pumpkins. The Merry Meander, we're planning to proceed with 2. We're going to make it an annual event. So this is number 2. Looking for volunteers, ways to make it better than last year, and just find another way to come together, even though COVID continues to rain down on the social committee quite harshly. Okay. Oh, on to Eric for transportation. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Lisa. Well, and I have the unenviable opportunity to follow up after the pumpkin wall. I don't know what I can do to top that. So first of all, for those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Eric Davis, and I'm the committee leader for the Transportation Committee. And so I took over for Jessica Meyer, as Sarah mentioned, had to leave or left the neighborhood over the course of the year. So what I wanted to do over the next couple minutes is just introduce you introduce the Transportation Committee, but also talk about the results from a transportation priority survey that we sent to the neighbors earlier this year. And then finally talk about the current status that we have, as well as next steps around transportation. So as an introduction, I think everybody here knows that being able to move around is a critical contributor to quality of life. And so as a transportation committee, and we're intentionally branded as transportation on traffic, because we want to make sure that there's a variety of ways for people to get around. And that includes walking, in our cars, bicycles, public transportation, et cetera. And so the way that we help manage opportunities and challenges with the transportation is the ECA meets with the CDOT and Charlotte Planning Resources on a quarterly basis. And we have a running list of both transportation challenges as well as opportunities that we track and work, because a lot of things with transportation tend to have a long gestation period. And because transportation is so integrated with other activities, we try and partner as a committee with other ECA committees. And really the land use and development is probably the closest intersection that we have. If you can go to the next slide. All right, so this is a bit of an eye test, but I believe that we'll be distributing the presentation. So what we have here is a survey that we sent out to get feedback from broad base of the community, different areas on what the transportation priorities are. And first of all, I want to thank the 150 plus people that responded and for a lot of the thoughtful comments that were connected to the survey. And so just summarizing this real quickly is pedestrian safety along 7th Street was number one with a bullet. Not very surprising. I mean, we expected that. And we actually, kind of divided up 7th Street to the area east of Pecan, heading towards Firefighter, and then west of Pecan towards downtown, towards Charlottetown Avenue. And those were number one and number two in our priorities, with bicycle lanes rounding out the top three. Some other kind of interesting items here is parking and increase in public transportation. While still important, kind of fell to the bottom of the priority list, but we're going to continue as a transportation committee to evaluate as our environment changes. So if we can go to the next slide, I just want to give a quick update on some of those higher priorities. So first of all, 7th Street pedestrian safety. So as I mentioned with the priority on the survey, the stretch of 7th Street from Pecan out towards Firefighter 5th Street, it was number one. And that's been that wasn't a surprise. And the ECA Transportation Committee has been working with CDOT for several years to try and address that area. With one of the priority efforts is to get a traffic signal at 7th and Caswell Bascom. It's a kind of as the 4 lanes move into our neighborhood. That traffic signal has been approved by CDOT. They said, yep, that makes sense. But given other priorities, it hasn't been prioritized or funded. And during 2021, during that evaluation period, we, very formally added that intersection. And although we did not get prioritized for 2021, we're still, as an ECA, working aggressively because we think that's an important safety and quality of life addition to our neighborhood. In addition, after that prioritization came out, we brought this to the attention of Councilman Eggleston, just to make sure that we get help from our elected officials also as we move into the next prioritization cycle. On the more positive side, I think most people have noticed over the past couple of years, there's been additional pedestrian crossings, at Clement Avenue, several years ago at St. Martin's. So we're trying to rebalance the use of 7th Street to help pedestrian access. And then with the new Crescent development that's being completed, that's going to again change the dynamics there. And so we're watching closely to see how that adjusts. Also wanted to talk about bicycle lanes, number 3 on our priority list. And there's a much more positive results or activity over the last year. I know that the Hawthorne Bridge and the streetcar has been a long and sometimes painful odyssey for the folks as that got developed. But now with the bicycle lanes on that bridge, it really opens up Elizabeth in a positive way to Plaza Midwood neighborhood as well as the Optimus Park neighborhood. I know my son and I have made many trips to Alexander Park as well as Optimus Hall for lunch on bicycles, and it's just a really great way to get around. Also, as you may know, the Memorial Stadium redevelopment is completed, and so the bicycle path and pedestrian path that goes under Charlottetown Avenue has opened up, which really connects us to the Greenway and provides access into downtown. And then finally, even though it's not our neighborhood explicitly, if you've been uptown recently, the city has done a lot of work to create dedicated bike lanes that on Davidson, 6th Street, I'm trying to remember all the places where they have dedicated lanes that allow pretty easy ability to navigate on a bicycle safely through the uptown area. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight some other specific areas of focus that we have in the near term. So one is the installation of a pedestrian crosswalk at Greenway and Caswell. So that's the entrance into Independence Park. That's been approved, prioritized, and funded. I'm just working with the city or CDOT to determine when that can be installed. And as soon as I get more details on a timeline, I'll make sure that gets into an upcoming newsletter. The intersection of Dodger and Cranbrook at Randolph is kind of a dodgy intersection for pedestrians as it kind of comes to a 3-way connection there. Engineering from CDOT has been trying to come up with an option that works there, and we're continuing to collaborate with them. And then finally, Hawthorne Lane are on the Gold Line streetcar now that that's running, and I hope everybody's had an opportunity to ride it. I did on the first day, and it was fun. But that does change traffic patterns around that area, and received updates or concerns from neighbors on some of the sight lines and traffic patterns on Hawthorne Lane. So we're going to continue to work with CDOT on those items. So with that, I will pass the mic over to our newsletter. And I think, Lauren, I think you're the understudy.
Yes, I am. I'm filling in for John McBride, who cannot join us tonight. But the ECA newsletter captures a snapshot of what life in the Elizabeth neighborhood is like 4 times a year. If you don't get yours, or if you do and have a comment, question, or idea, please email newsletter@elizabethcommunity.com. Next slide. The newsletter is produced and distributed by a dedicated team of volunteers, and I'd like to offer a special thanks to the unheralded, tireless folks who deliver the newsletter, many of whom have been doing it for years. Next slide. And also a huge thanks to all of our advertisers for their continued support. Be sure to tell them you saw their ad in the ECA newsletter. And now I'm going to pass it on to Paul Freeman.
Hey guys, our neighborhood's trees are aging out. I'm sure you've noticed, and hopefully I don't need to tell you the importance the trees provide for us in the city. But the ECA thought it was important to team up with the city and plant new trees in the right of way. Below are the criteria that the city requires. Basically, we provide the funding, and they give us the locations and the species of what they want to see. Theoretically, we want to plant a diverse urban forest. We don't want to have the same trees that we have now. We have where every tree is the same, and so they all age out the same, and they all come crashing down at the same time. So we want to provide new, fresh, young trees, different species, so we have a vibrant urban forest. I'm pleased to announce that Nate Nagrin with Southern East has teamed up with us. He lives on Greenway again for planting 5 new trees in the neighborhood. We provide the money for the trees, and he is installing them for free. So he's effectively doubling our impact on what we can do in our neighborhood. Next slide, please. You probably noticed all the red and orange X's in Independence Square recently during the renovation, and everybody kind of freaked out. And so we decided that we needed to meet with the group and say, hey, what's really going on here? Sarah pulled together a team of experts in the neighborhood, and we reviewed the plans on site with the county. And we said, hey, there's some opportunities here to save more trees than what you're showing. And so we worked with them, and we did just that. We said, hey, this tree doesn't need to go. This tree can be saved. And they basically listened to us within reason and increased the number of trees. Next slide, please. This is my annual bag for money. If you feel inclined to please donate. As Danielle highlighted, I was kind of impressed. It's a line item that cannot be used for anything else other than trees. So drop off money at any board members that you see or our address. Thanks so much. And next, I'm turning it over to our communications chair, West.
Hello, it's me again, although I'm standing in for myself at this point. I was the communications chair again this year. I've been in that role since about 2017, late 2017. This particular year, at the beginning of the year, my responsibilities included emails, the website, social media membership, e-commerce, and other odds and ends. And I want to kind of talk about how that's transformed here real quick. From from a hails and farewells perspective, I did want to call out, some of the team members that have worked with me. Yen Duong, who Sarah mentioned earlier, who was one of our secretaries this year until she moved out of the neighborhood. She was also our social media person, and she did a great job, despite having three young children at home. She did such a good job that we really wanted her to join the board, which she did for a little bit there until she moved away. Also on the team this year, last year I asked for help with website, and I got a lot of help and consultation from Lul Shawangazal. He's a Elizabeth resident, and he's actually built websites for nonprofits in the past. He did a really great job. We actually built a prototype and hoping to implement some of those features in the website this coming year. You already heard from Lauren, who has taken over not only the membership, but also the e-commerce portion of what I was working on in the past year. She's just been awesome. I can't believe how good she is at her job already, and what she's been able to accomplish. Then for pretty much all the rest of my job that I will not be doing this coming year, as I'm hopefully going to be president here pretty soon, Debbie Rubenstein is going to take over as the communications chair. And I'm really excited. If you know Debbie, you know that she has great background doing this kind of work, and she's an incredible communicator as well. So like really a perfect fit for the gig. Also recently, when I was at the July 4th event at Hardin Miner's house this summer, I met Amanda Four, who owns East Apes Vintage, and she's going to be doing Instagram posts for us. So thank you, Amanda. I appreciate your help. And if there's anybody else that is interested in helping with communications or anything else, just give us an email at communications@elizabethcommunity.com. Notable happenings this year, we did have some website shenanigans. Specifically, if you did a Google search from certain devices, certain types of devices, and you clicked on that link, it would take you to a different website. The really good news, though, is that we were able to recover that with the help of Kim Magus, who helps host our website, and he does a great job with that. Got that sorted out. Really appreciate the folks that brought that to my attention. There was a lot of communications, as hopefully a lot of y'all saw, with regard to the local historic designation. And I also wanted to call out the great feedback that I've gotten from the community throughout the year and in past years too. Please keep that coming. I consider that definitely a gift. And I'm really excited about transitioning into the president role in the next year, and excited about what Debbie and Lauren and many others are going to do in the communications and membership and e-commerce field. That's it. I think next on the list is Evan with the Land Use and Development Committee.
West, a quick question. You talk about possibly being the president. If you're not the president, does that put me in line for the throne?
I don't know.
I'm just asking. I'm Evan Kettler. I had the privilege of leading the Land Use Development Committee this year after having participated in it for the prior 2 years. Thankfully, those who came before left things in good hands. I don't think we ever anticipated the way this year would unfold. In addition to what we, don't even have to refer to, but we know happened. There was a huge impact on the construction and development industry in terms of supply issues and labor issues. And at the same time, we had an unprecedented number of major rezoning requests passed through our committee and through Elizabeth, if you will. And I want to thank our committee members for somehow or other helping us to manage through that. I'm going to just tell you the truth. I believe that I know less about land use and development than anyone on the committee, and I'm grateful for their support. I'm going to thank Sarah Crowder, Jason Epley, and Vaughn Hansen, who have been providing pro bono services from benchmark planning. We'll talk a little more about that later in terms of the areas of that assistance, but particularly given the complexity of the environment we're operating in between the 2040 plan and the UDO and issues related to the advisability of pursuing a historic district and the transit issues in the area. Their expertise has been invaluable. I want to give a special shout out to Beth Haney, who has stepped down from our committee after making a significant contribution over many years, honestly. Normally, I would reserve that for someone who was, retiring, but Beth is not retiring. She just, we all pass the torch is what happens. And so if we're good at what we do, we plan for that, we prepare for that, and we have more people to bring to bear. I want to thank Chris Warren, who joined our committee this year. He is with Bowright, the developers of the Langston, and Chris has provided a valuable perspective that we didn't have before. And Lisa Yagla, whose architectural professional background has been of great support and great assistance as well. Next slide, please. If I miss anybody here, please forgive me. I don't mean to. One of the ways we get our work done is we rely on working groups, because there's just too much work for any 5 or 6 or 7 people to do. And there's areas where we need specialized expertise. So we've had a group of people helping us with architectural review. And sorry, I've got to refer to my slide because I'm down a computer today. But and in addition to our committee members, I want to thank Melanie Sizemore and Jim Belvin, who've really been of great help with that, as well as other people in specific and valued areas. With respect to the gold line, somehow or other that comes under our group as well. We've worked with Eric Davis a bit on that as well. But Ann Lambert, who's also on our board, and Morgan Williams, who lives on Hawthorne, and Andy Pease, who recently offered to help us, and I think will be a valuable asset to us, are working with that. I'm just going to get my Cat's Gold Line comment out of the way. We know that this has been a difficult project for the community. It's been an especially difficult project for the neighbors nearby. We continue to work to try and have some impact in terms of the resulting quality of life issues for those folks. I will not claim to have had a lot of success there, but we have not given up. We've also had some help. Elizabeth is peppered with alleyways throughout, and we view these as a potentially great resource to be shared and enjoyed. And so, in addition to Chris Warren, Monty Ritchie, and Ken Lambla have been working with us as we really are in the early stages of trying to come up with a unified and reasonable approach to those things. We've also been heavily involved in the 2040 comprehensive plan of late. And the first part of that, as relates to Elizabeth, is something called place mapping. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I did want to give credit to Paul Friedman, who's also on our board, and Elizabeth McMillan, who's heading up the team building out Elizabeth on 7th at 7th and Caswell. But they have participated with us, and they're adding valuable skills to that. So next slide, please. I'm going to run through these quickly because I don't think they require much explanation. I'm looking at from Independence Park at the King's College site, formerly King's College site, where a rezoning has been approved for a large medical office building, a parking deck, but the front of the parking deck would be wrapped by multifamily, hopefully condominium stacked flats. That project is really waiting for anchor tenants for the medical office building, and we'll see progress when they have tenants. I think also, like all of these major projects, if they didn't have materials under contract early on, some of them I think have just slowed down because of the cost of steel and concrete. Next slide, please. The Ortho Carolina Spine Center at Vale, Colonial, and Randolph. That has been rezoned. Ortho Carolina intended to be the primary tenant there of their own building. I think in the pandemic, that has really forced them to take a step back for a moment and reevaluate what their true needs are before they determine what the ultimate size of that property would be. We've had a lot of success in working with them to get certain concessions to make that building more of a benefit and less of a problem, particularly for those on Vale. Next, please. Elizabeth on 7th. Well, you can go outside and look at it if you want. I think we're in the late stages of that building. It's shaping up exactly as the design called for. If you go by now, you'll see that they're adding the glazed green tile that our architectural review committee was so insistent upon including to make the building something more than a commodity, if you will. And I think it's going to be great. We are looking forward to announcements about tenants in the near future. Those don't happen until there are signed leases. And so we're hoping to see tenant activity and upfit activity in the fourth quarter with completion soon thereafter. Next slide, please. At the corner of Firefighter and 7th, this rendering is, I think, out of date, but we don't have the new rendering. The developer has reached an agreement with Saucy Burbank to develop 10 townhomes there. And we look forward to having more information about the actual look of those. I think that they will resemble this in some way, but builders are builders. And so they're gonna, bring their own style to the table. Next slide, please. So this is the corner of Torrance, near the Elizabeth Elementary School. The land has been prepped. You can see in the photo on the left, the design is in place there on the right. I have not seen any actual construction take place. And again, particularly on these smaller properties, if my costs have gone up by 20 to 25%, I'm going to wait for things to normalize a little bit. That's not what I've been told by them, but that's how I look at it. We are excited about that project because it is a different kind of, it's micro units that won't be, and it's designed for multifamily living. In this particular case, there's the hope that a multi-generational family will actually be the primary tenants. Next slide, please. This is McShane Partners office, and the head of McShane Partners and her partner, their residence will be the top floor of this, facing Independence. If you've gone by and seen where all that construction is, adjacent to Independence Park near Cajun Queen, that's what this is about. And I think it's going to be a handsome and exciting project, really. I love the idea of having residences on the park. And so the building that came before was not iconic. It served its purpose and it lived its useful life. Next slide, please. I think this is a success story. This is what was the Ford property at the corner of Greenway and Caswell. Bourgeois McGinn came in and offered to restore the building, retain the footprint, and we reached an agreement with them with the input of the community and the support of the community to keep it the way it was, but they're using it primarily for office use. And I think they've done a great job of it, frankly. Next slide, please. Now I've got to see if I have any notes. Okay, Memorial Stadium, I'm just going to give credit to those who came before. I actually had no contribution, and our current members of our committee had no contribution to this, but some of them were involved in it earlier on. I think that the plans for this took place 4 years ago, and this is the fruition. It's back open as a community amenity. With respect to the Gold Line, I think I've already addressed that. I will say that I hope you'll ride it and take advantage of the fact that it runs through the community. I do not know, nor does anyone know, what the long-term implications of that are. We're aware of transit-oriented districts where the city pushes for greater density. The Gold Line has thus far not been classified that way, but we will have to be mindful and collaborate with the city to make sure that we effectively look after our neighbors who have borne the brunt of this. Honestly, the biggest thing, as Sarah pointed out, I believe, or Eric, the bridge is open, and I think that's great. Next slide, please. Lisa, I'm going to ask you to make sure that your mic is on and just help me walk through this. But the 2040 comprehensive plan was adopted by City Council in June of 2021, this year. And that plan has been long in development. And the intention of that plan is multifaceted. The impact will be, I think, fewer rezoning requests. More, the work is being done upfront rather than parcel by parcel. And we are working with the planning and development on that to make sure, and you can see that the sample map on the right. Thank you to our friends at Benchmark for helping with this. And I think Lisa has done some work on this as well to highlight the areas as both as they really are and as we hope they will be. And we're really trying to keep this, to keep the neighborhood in scale, if you will, and to avoid something that doesn't belong here being here. We're also looking at the possibilities of something called neighborhood character overlays. And it was one of the reasons our committee was unanimous in its support for something other than pursuit of a comprehensive historic designation. Another thing is a residential infill overlay district, and that may have a slightly different purpose. But what we're trying to do is, we have a very unique neighborhood. It's chopped into pieces. It's been chopped into pieces by years of, honestly, not great decision making, and some of it is just the nature of cities. They grow and they evolve. What we're trying to do is protect quality of life for the entire community, and at the same time to work with the city because we think it's a more effective approach. Uniform Development Ordinance will grow out of the comprehensive plan, and that's really, those will be the regulations that back it up. On the slide are links to the websites, and we're invited to follow up, ask to participate. There are ways to do that. Next slide, please. Okay, Sarah, you're joining me on mic too?
Yes, I am. Go right ahead.
I'm going to go through the slide and then ask Sarah if you would like to add anything before we introduce Cliff, okay?
Okay.
So and much of this was seen in the announcement that we sent out in mid-July, I suppose. I'm not going to go through all the details of it, but we have spent, our committee and our board and supporters of historic district designation have spent countless hours doing research in meetings and in discussions about this. We announced our decision in an open letter to the community on September the 15th. That was really driven by our desire to devote our resources to the most effective and least burdensome tools available to grow and evolve with the city without sacrificing quality of life. And I will admit that I do have a core belief that cities change, and Elizabeth will change. Our job is to make it change for the better, and we're doing our best to do that. The decision does not preclude anyone from pursuing a historic district on a smaller scale on their block, on their street, in their area. You don't need us to do that. If you look at Hermitage Court in Myers Park, it's been done before. So, Sarah, what have I missed?
I don't really have a lot to add to that, Evan. I do want to just say to everyone on the call in the community what I have consistently said. This board worked really, really hard in coming to a decision on historic district designation. And no one started, I started on this over 2 years ago with an opinion. We decided we would educate ourselves. We talked to experts. We laid it all out in the letter. We tried to be transparent. And we thought we really owed it to the advocates and Cliff's group, Hennef, that have reconstituted. They originally got together in the 1980s as a 501c3 to make a decision. Would I have liked to had a large community meeting with everyone in one room and the experts on the stage and microphones? You're darn right. But given the circumstances of the pandemic, that was not responsible to do. So we tried to do the workarounds the best we could, using the newsletter, using email, lots of phone calls and sidewalk conversations. So we made the decision we felt was responsible, and I'm just pleased with the board process and how hard everyone worked. Everyone was engaged with it. Whatever committee they led, everyone was engaged. This was not a silo decision. So with that, I would like to recognize Cliff Settlemeyer, he's on video and on audio to make some, he's the president of Hennef, as I've said. And Cliff, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Sarah and Evan, I am the president of the Historic Elizabeth Neighborhood Foundation, or as Sarah explained earlier, the Hennef. I'll be using one other acronym tonight, just so you can keep it straight, is LHD for Local Historic Designation. First, I'd like to say my time is very short here. I had prepared a long dissertation on how smart, tough, and hardworking Sarah Crowder is. I even came up with a few kind words to say about Evan, but unfortunately I had to cut that because I didn't have time for it. I hope you'll forgive me, guys. But seriously, on a serious note, thank you very much for all you've done this past summer. I've enjoyed working with you, Sarah.
Thank you, Cliff.
Let's start with what is Heaven, the Hennef. It's a nonprofit that was created, as Sarah said, in the 1990s to raise money for, ironically enough, local historic designation. It was followed by a period of inactivity, and then it was reconstituted under the leadership of Elizabeth Bevan. And under her leadership, the Hennef began to take on issues that affected the community and outside entities as well. Once again, the organization became dormant, and just this past summer, a group of past board members reconstituted it once again, and we decided to make our first issue local historic designation. I appreciate the comments of Evan and Sarah about the work that they put in, but the Hennef board was disappointed with the final decision. And I would say on two levels. First of all, we were disappointed that the answer was no. And our feeling is that you did do a great job of digging up facts and talking to a lot of people. But ultimately, everyone who makes a decision on this issue is going to have to apply their own values to those facts. So how you ultimately feel about LHD will be determined not just by the facts, but by your values. And for that reason, there's a wide range of feelings that are possible. The second thing that disappointed us was that the ECA decided to make a decision at all. Our feeling was that this issue is so important, so critical to the future of Elizabeth, that it should be made by a much broader cross-section of the citizens of Elizabeth. So the Hennef believes that a process is deserved by the Elizabeth community, a process to determine just how much interest there is in LHD. Two reasons for that. One is the 30-year history of the attempts the neighborhood has made to achieve LHD. Second of all, the results of an informal survey conducted by a group of local neighbors to find out what the interest was in LHD in Elizabeth right now. That survey had its faults, and we don't pretend that it was scientific, but nevertheless, it showed a high level of interest in LHD. So for those reasons, I want to announce tonight that the Hennef has decided to execute the proposal that we made to the ECA, a 5-step proposal, with one big difference, and that is that the Hennef will pay all expenses incurred in the effort to determine exactly what the appetite is for LHD in Elizabeth. We will ask for, and I might say I personally will ask for and hope for, cooperation from the ECA throughout the process. I'm talking about just helping us out in small ways, and most of all, we ask you to realize that this is not an attempt to throw sand in the face of the ECA, or there is no animosity felt here. There's nothing like that. As Sarah said to me many times this summer, and I certainly agreed, in the end, we're all neighbors. That is what is really important. And I hope to get your help as we execute this process. Finally, I want to end with saying this. The Hennef on local historic designation, we want to give a voice to the citizens of Elizabeth. And we are willing to spend the money that it will take to do that. And we hope that everyone will join us, whether you're for us or against us, and join in the discussion. Thanks very much. Thanks again, Sarah, and thanks again, Evan, in particular. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you so much, Cliff. I really appreciate your remarks and your I know this is very heartfelt for you, and it's not easy decisions, and I've enjoyed sitting on your porch talking with you about this. You're an absolute gentleman, and it's meant a lot to me. Thank you. Now I would like to recognize Larkin Eggleston, who is our esteemed city council representative. And let's see, Larkin, I hope we've got you on video, and I'm going to go silent. So the floor is yours, sir.
You have me, and you have my daughter, Salem, who insisted on sitting in my lap while I take this call. So I'm glad to be with y'all. She's very anxious because her mom went out of town today. So I'm single dad duty. I know we're going to have some time at the end for questions. And so I'll be brief because I'd rather field questions. And I know a lot of the things that are city related have been covered already. I know we've talked about the streetcar. There is still, and I do hope that you get the opportunity to ride it, because it is nothing like the streetcar that was out there before. And I do think you'll enjoy it and hopefully find it to be an amenity. I know it has been a headache for many, particularly those on Hawthorne and on either side of the bridge. There is a punch list of work that's still being gone through, even though the line is open. That doesn't mean all work is completed. And as I'm sure everyone expects, there will be legal proceedings that follow the completion of that work with the contractor. I share in the disappointment. I can't say that I went through the same pain that many of you did in dealing with that construction and with that project. but I am fully aware of the difficulty it caused, of the damage in some cases that's been incurred to quality of life, to buildings, to everything, and unfortunately, a lot of that's going to have to go through a legal process. So I know that's not satisfactory, but it is what it is, and I hope that in time we'll make those wrongs right, and that the contractor will make those wrongs right, and that the city will, and that you'll be happy that it's there once we do. So another thing that people have probably been tracking is we're going through a redistricting process. Elizabeth doesn't have to track that too closely because in all of the proposed maps, which I guess theoretically we don't necessarily have to go with one of those 3 maps. In reality, we almost certainly will. In all those maps, Elizabeth stays in District 1 because it's pretty squarely in the middle of the district. So you'll not be getting redistricted into any other district. As some of you might know, I'm running for one of the 4 citywide at-large seats to serve a 3rd term in a different seat on the Charlotte City Council. Many of you probably know Billy Madelon. He's already announced that he's going to run for the District 1 seat. Lives in Plaza Midwood, former owner of the Van Landingham Estate and current owner of the Moorhead Inn, and actually was your city councilman for a period of about 5 months in 2013. Undoubtedly, there will be other candidates for that. The filing is in December. The primary is in March. The general election is in April. That all was delayed because of the delay in getting back the census data that was needed for redistricting. Redistricting is required every time there's a census. So we'll be on the ballot with your county commission, school board, U.S. Senate, everything in between. So would love to be a second voice for Elizabeth on the council as an at-large rep if you see fit to send me there again. There's a lot of stuff that's been covered in terms of land use, in terms of the historic district. I'm happy to take questions from my perspective on any of those that folks want to ask. I'll echo Evan's encouragement to ride the streetcar, to go out and check out Memorial Stadium if you haven't. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the neighborhood. I know what a pain construction is. I'm living it over here in Plaza Midwood every day right now. And my house now looks like the Thirsty Beaver of minus Mick Jagger, looks like the Thirsty Beaver of Plaza Midwood, surrounded by a lot of new construction and a lot of ongoing headaches. So I do feel a lot of the pain in that sense, but I hope that some of that pain comes with a payoff. And I think I've had a chance to go to two of the Independence games now at Memorial Stadium, and it's beautiful. And it's an incredible asset and amenity to our city and to the community. I've ridden the streetcar a couple of times, and it is a much better experience than what we had out there before, and it connects to more places. So I hope that through all of the frustration, there is reward at the end, and I hope that you'll take advantage of those things that are there. I'm always available. I think my email is there on the slide, so don't hesitate to email me. I know there's been conversation about the hospital as well. I was not able to log on in time to hear y'all's conversation about that. I'm sure there's questions about that. I will say with that and the streetcar, it's generally best for me to try to work through the people that you elect as your leaders. And so I do get, as you can imagine, lots of emails about lots of things every day. I do have a staff person that I have half of the time. I share a staff person with another council member. They try to help us keep up with the email. I know at times things slip through the cracks. I would encourage you, and certainly I try to make sure that people get responses to everything they send us. I know that I've heard from some folks that on the hospital issues, they didn't get a response, and we're not satisfied with that. And I don't expect you to be. I will encourage you to make sure you're working with the people who are heading up each of these committees or each of these efforts, because in this case, I was able to help facilitate a meeting with leadership from Atrium, and my assumption, maybe incorrectly, was that people who were most impacted or most passionate about that issue were in the loop with the group from Elizabeth who was working on that issue. So on any of those things, please make sure you're connecting with whoever the lead is based on the committee or based on the issue, because that's generally how I'm working. So I'm going through Sarah as the president. I'm going through committee chairs. I'm working with Evan on things that are land use related or streetcar related. So I encourage you to do it that way. I also encourage with any problems, be they construction issues, public safety issues, whatever it is, don't hesitate to call 911, call 311, use the CLT Plus app, email me as well. And again, I apologize if some of those don't always get the response you're looking for, but I do try to work through a main point person in each neighborhood. I represent over 30 neighborhoods, so I try to have a main point of contact on certain issues in certain neighborhoods and work through them. And I hope that information gets disseminated out. And but again, I'll wrap there unless, Sarah, you think there was something that you wanted me to hit on that I didn't, and I'm able to stay on for the remainder. So happy to field questions as they arise.
I think we can just let the Q&A, people ask you questions through the Q&A, because we did cover a lot of things that you had mentioned. So we'll do that. While you're still on, I will deviate from procedure. Jason, I'm sorry. There was one specific question about the Mercy ER releases, Larkin, about the understanding that many of the people released in this way are homeless. Can we confirm if that's correct and elaborate on the roof above involvement? And if there's an option to get these folks supported services rather than just dump them on the street. And that was quite a subject of our call with the Mercy, with the Atrium leadership.
Anecdotally, they certainly are. Some of them are experiencing homelessness. Many of them obviously most of them may be experiencing mental health issues. And Roof Above is engaged, as are other agencies, both non-governmental. I think the challenge, and we run into this with panhandlers uptown, frankly, all of the things that come along with homelessness and all of the challenges that it poses for both the people experiencing homelessness and the community at large. At the end of the day, it's really hard to involuntarily commit somebody. We don't want to be criminalizing homelessness and mental health issues by just continuously arresting people and having it become a revolving door, because they're not going to stay in the jail very long. We can't make somebody accept help they don't want to accept, but in very narrow circumstances. And so I know that it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for us because our officers don't want to have to go and respond and deal with the same person 18 times a month, and yet they end up doing that oftentimes. So Roof Above is engaged. We'll continue to make sure that they're part of that conversation. And in a lot of cases, they are offering help that is being declined. And so it does become difficult if you tell someone where the resources are, you offer to connect them to them, and they just say, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to do my own thing, and you can't make me. And we literally can't in most cases.
Thank you. And they also noted that, one solution, not a solution, but one alternative may be for us to join together with Atrium to go to the county commission and say, we really need more homeless services and more effective mental health services. So with that, I'm going to thank you, Larkin, and ask you to stay on. And then we're going to go to the totally experimental part of this meeting. We've never done this before, and try to answer the questions and figure out the appropriate person to do that. And I'm going to ask you to identify yourself if you're asking a question, so we know who we're talking to. So there's one anonymous question, and I would just ask for you to ask that again and with your name. So let's see. Jason, I'm supposed to let you do this, so let me stop talking and let you ask the questions.
You're fine. You're welcome to manage that if you want. I think if we're going to let the anonymous one go for now, the next question is, if ECA isn't in support of historic designation, is there any chance the city council would approve it?
So that's a question for Larkin, right?
Yeah, I'm going to assume that one's coming to me. Is there a chance? Would it be helpful? I mean, we obviously want as much agreement as possible. In 4 years on being on the city council, I am quite confident at this point in my political career that there's never been anything we've made a decision on that everyone in the neighborhood has agreed on. So the fact that some person or some group of persons doesn't support the designation or doesn't support whatever it is doesn't mean that that there's not a chance of success. I think that for me, and I can obviously only speak for the vote that I have, I think for me, what would be most important is having a sense, and not just sense, but proof that a majority of the people, and not just a 51% majority, but a majority of the people whose properties would be impacted by that designation were either in support or were sort of neutral on the topic. If there was a sense that a good number of people whose properties would be part of that district were against it, I think that, in combination with the fact that there's not formal support from the community association who's looking at things more broadly for the whole neighborhood and the impacts that it could have, it would be difficult for me. So I think it's going to be that what's the adoption rate, or what's the support rate for the people whose properties would be impacted.
And Evan, could you add to that as well? I mean, because what the board approved was a little bit more nuanced than the question seems to presume.
Our decision was that we were not supporting a comprehensive historic district, pursuit of a historic district for Elizabeth. My personal belief is that that is not in the best interests of the community. And at the same time, as I walk through Elizabeth, I see that there are sections of the community that are primarily beautiful old historic properties. And if you and your neighbors all get together, the ECA is not going to oppose that. It's just, you know, we're looking at the needs of 5,500 people that live here and 1,500 homes or properties. And so feel free. And I'm supportive of a group of neighbors who unanimously support that.
And Evan,
personally, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I just wanted to add one more thing there.
No, I mean, that's really what it is. I don't, philosophically, I'm not really in favor of forcing anyone to have their property designated a historic property. I'm super supportive of a group of people who are trying to preserve their slice of the world, and I'm in favor of that.
The other thing I was going to say is one of the other really critical factors would be the feedback from the obvious, and this is somewhat obvious, but the feedback from the Historic District Commission and that staff and that citizen board in terms of what they thought the appropriateness for designation was for whatever the exact geographic footprint you determine to put forward. And the other thing, and it was mentioned by Evan when he talked about, as we continue through with the 2040 plan and the place type mapping and the UDO, all of which is critically important, and I hope you'll continue to stay engaged. Evan mentioned the character overlay districts, and I think that that's an opportunity, and it doesn't mean they're not mutually exclusive, a historic district designation or a character overlay district or over character. Hell, I can't even get to that. We have so many acronyms and so many different things. The
neighborhood character overlay. NCO.
Yeah, it's just alphabet soup. That could be something as small as, we talked about it in our transportation and planning meeting about 2 weeks ago, that could be something as small as like one block face. So that could be 6 houses that say, we all agree. Now that's not going to have the exact same parameters that a historic district designation would have in terms of what can and can't be done. It's going to look more form-based in the way that it regulates what could happen on that block or those blocks in terms of things like setback or massing or things like that. So that's an opportunity too, even at a much more granular level, to say that our block has this, or these 3 blocks have this unique character, or it's still all original homes or whatever it is. And we think that the setback is a really important part of the way that these blocks lay out, or we think that the height is a really important part of what makes these blocks so special. And you could go down to that block level and say, we want to pursue that. And if there's the agreement just amongst those 6 or 8 or 20 homeowners, you could do that on a micro level. So it's not to say don't pursue the historic designation, because you could do both, but this is also another tool in the toolbox to utilize that might be an easier lift.
And as a point of order, Larkin, we would look for your support in designating as much of Elizabeth Neighborhood 1 as possible, because that's the only way we can apply neighborhood character overlays. Which is the scale and the size and scale and density I think that our community is looking for. It doesn't, density is driven by the current zoning designation, but size, scale, setbacks, those are part of these overlays. Correct?
Yeah, and I think for each one with the overlay, what we talked about in that committee meeting 2 weeks ago is that for one side of Elizabeth, they might say, we're not as worried about the height, but it's the setback from the street that we think we want to retain that consistency and uniformity. The other side of the neighborhood might say, well, we don't care as much about the setback, but we care more about the height. So it doesn't even have to be the same template that's being used on different blocks in different parts of the neighborhood. It can just be you and the other 6 people on your block feel like height is the most important part or setback's the most important part or whatever it is. And you can get down to that level of detail for your specific vision of that block that you want to have the overlay on.
I think we have, I think Clifton was wanting to add something from the floor. Clifton, can you speak?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to say that this process that we're going to undertake will not be short. It's going to be, in my opinion, a year in the making. And I would caution listeners not to be too concerned about what is being said about what can be done or what cannot be done. I have a year to work on it, and I think that all things are possible. Not everything's going to happen, and maybe LHD is not going to happen, but all things are possible. And I would just say to people who support it to keep your head up, and we'll see what happens. I went to see my doctor the other day, and she asked me how my summer was, and I said to her, well, I had a pretty good summer. I made good friends with Sarah Crowder. And I think that interpersonal relationships are going to be very important going forward, and we'll just see how they work out. I'm optimistic that whatever happens will be for the good, and the HENF will be working hard for local historic designation. So thank you very much. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Cliff. Let's see, Bonnie, you asked a question about neighborhood character overlay, and I believe Larkin addressed that, and there's a whole lot more information available online in the 2040 plan, and we're happy to, I think we sent that link out, but we can send that out again. And the good thing is we're in on the ground floor on that, and that's where the LUD committee is going to put a huge amount of time and effort. I'm stepping on your lines here, Jason, but there's a question also from Bonnie about why the ECA didn't ask for neighborhood input before we voted on whether or not to ask for historic designation or whether or not to support historic designation. And Evan, can you fill that one, please?
I can do my best. We feel like the neighborhood's been talking to us for 2 years and been talking to each other for 2 years on this specific topic in this particular round, if you will. The challenge with, let's take the idea of a neighborhood vote. The level of education that would be involved in having people make an informed vote to do that is really mind-boggling. We actually looked at the possibility of doing a survey, but we found that we couldn't design a survey without doing extensive education in the process. And even then, people, you can lead people to it, but you can't make them do it. And so, we were asked to do our best on behalf of the community, and that's what we're doing. And in the end, that's really how I feel about it, is that it's representative in nature. We spent the time on everyone's behalf, on your behalf. As if there's anyone who thinks that I actually have a personal vested interest in the outcome here, please let me know, because that would be the first person to say that to me. We've been open to listening to our neighbors. We've shared the Elizabeth Families Group. We've shared the newsletter and given everyone a chance to speak their piece. But you also don't know what we've heard from on the negative side about this. So we reviewed it. We made the best decision we could given the facts, and we did extensive research before making that decision. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. But thank you. That is the questions I see. Mel has put a comment in the Q&A about what Larkin is saying. So
yeah, and I can touch on that again if you want, Sarah. I think
okay, yeah.
So the character overlays, it's that and the historic districts are sort of two separate things to Mel's question. The character overlays, there is a yet to be determined actual threshold. So if you said, if Sarah said, hey, my block has 8 houses on it, and we want to do a character overlay for just that block face, and we want to have it address setbacks, there would actually be a threshold, like a percentage threshold that has not yet been determined, that 70% of the people who would be part of that would have to agree to it, or something of that nature. On the HDC thing, it's more anecdotal because, again, depending on how big the geography is of what you want to put forward for potential designation, it's unlikely that we're going to be able to get a specific answer from every single person who lives in every single one of those homes or every single property owner. So it will have to be something that's a bit more of a feel, but I think that, and I know that there was a survey done, and I would love for Cliff to enlighten me about exactly how that was administered and what the response rate was, and how many people were non-responsive to that. But I think that it would be helpful to have documentation. And again, I think just having, and I know this was not a petition, but people bring petitions to us all the time. And, if I see someone's name on it, I'll ask them, oh, I didn't realize you were involved in this event. And oftentimes, or this issue. And oftentimes I go, oh, I don't know. I don't really know what that was about. But one of my neighbors asked me to sign this petition. So I do think we want to see, and I'm not supposing that's what happened here, because I think this is a much more targeted approach and probably much more accurate in terms of people's feelings about that, about the historic district designation. But it is just to say that I would want to make sure that I want to be confident that people understood exactly what they're signing up for, the good, bad, and the otherwise, because there are pros and there are cons to historic designation. And I ran on historic preservation. I'm on the state board for Preservation North Carolina. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, but there are challenges for people. There are things that people ought to know before they sign themselves up for that. And I know that many of you who've been very involved know those things, but I'd want to feel confident that others who are going to be impacted and have not been as involved and who had not spent as much time as many of you have educating yourself on the topic knew them as well.
Thank you, Larkin. We are a little bit over time, so I'm going to move us along to our next agenda item, and that is our action item, which is the presentation of the slate of officers and board members for next year, 21-22. And we sent those out, boy, when was that? Last week? We've been busy, so I'm losing track a little bit. We're going to do this election the way we did last year, where, well, let me present the slate. So here's the slate. West is nominated for president, Evan for vice president, Lisa secretary, Danielle, I've already said a lot of this, me as past president. Marie McDaniel, who's on the call, who lives on Pecan, did a ton of work on Mary Meander. She's good friends with Lisa. I think she lives next door, right, Lisa? She's going to be awesome as social chair. Eric Davis is going to stay on for transportation, John for newsletter, Paul beautification, Rob Zabel for the 8K, Lauren Gomez for membership, Debbie Rubenstein for communications. We are thrilled with that, Debbie. And our three at large would, Ann Lambert, Sherry, and Reagan Miller would remain. And that is the slate. We did ask the community for nominations and did not receive any nominations. That would have been essentially the nominations for the floor process. So at this point, West will send an email out after this meeting rather than try to do a voice vote, and members can vote by email, or you can drop off, you can fill out a paper ballot. Oh, good, here it is right on the screen. On my front porch, 2050 Greenway. I've got a lot of eggplant in my garden, y'all. I may put some out there so people can get eggplant at the same time. You can only eat so much. It's one vote per household, and you need to purchase your membership. You can see all that right there. And when you vote, if you vote by paper ballot, or you just want to join with a check and a form, those are on my front porch as well. So now, it's been a long meeting. I would like to turn to West for some closing remarks, and before I ask for a motion. So West, the floor is yours.
Sure. And given the fact that we're already over time, I'll be as brief as I can here. I just wanted to say a couple of words here before we close. Number one is thank you. So I want to thank the entire community. We're in kind of year two of COVID, and it's been an interesting ride. And I mean, the amount of work that Elizabeth residents do in the community is really off the charts on all kinds of different things. And it really, I want to echo the comment that Sarah and some others have made of really the people are what make Elizabeth really special. So thank you all for that. I also want to thank the board, of course. I think I spent more time meeting with board members this year than I have in any of my other years, and most of the time was over Zoom and other meeting platforms. And you're just a great group to work with, and that's one of the things that makes me really excited about this coming year. Is many of you are staying on, and I just can't wait to work with you again and accomplish a ton of stuff, which we have a ton of things to do, and I'm excited to do it. And then last but not least, on the thank yous, I wanted to especially recognize Sarah. I remember when she first started working with the board in her most recent incarnation before she was president. I didn't know her really well. And then when I heard that she was being nominated to be the next president a couple of years ago, I was ecstatic. The reasons for that hopefully are obvious. Number one, she's an incredibly nice and caring person. She really cares about doing the right thing, and also cares about Elizabeth and all of us, her neighbors, which is just a great feature for an ECA president. The second, she's incredibly thoughtful, and I want to say thanks for that, especially with all the issues we've been working on for the last couple of years. And her ability to be empathetic is really a hallmark of great leadership, in my personal opinion. And it's interesting because the third thing on my list, Cliff mentioned it earlier on, which is how tough she is. And you would never know how tough she is and how resilient she is and how resilient she made us, all of us as a neighborhood, as a leader. But that is sort of one of the hidden strengths of Sarah. I don't know if you know that or not, Sarah. But leading us through the last couple of years. When you first started, it looked like a pretty normal year for the board, and some months into it, it turned out it was not that normal, and it really hasn't returned to normal. So thank you for all of that. Kind of looking ahead, I'm really excited about this next year. And I'd love to talk to anybody who's interested in coming to my front porch, or I'm happy to come to yours and discuss. But of course, working with this new slate of board members and officers, we've got two brand new folks, and one person that's already in the seat in the membership chair. Really talented folks. I really appreciate all the work that you've done in the past. I'm really excited about the work that we are going to continue the arc of in this next year. The other thing, I always try to ask for something in the annual meeting, and my ask for the entire neighborhood this year is around your new neighbors. We have so many new neighbors out there, all through the neighborhood. There's been a lot of people that have moved away, new families and individuals have come in. When you meet these people, let them know about our neighborhood, let them know about the ECA. We have a great email group, which is both informative and often entertaining. Encourage them to go to the website and sign up for that. Have them sign up for the notification emails so they know about awesome things like the pumpkin wall and the 8K and the newsletter and all the great things that go on in our neighborhood. Because again, the people are the secret to sauce to Elizabeth. I want to make sure that they are engulfed in the culture that we've already built. And then last but not least, I think we've really made great strides in not only being as an ECA and as a neighborhood working for the betterment of our own neighborhood, but I can feel that we're moving towards being more of a leader in Charlotte as a whole. So, especially with all the UDO conversations and relationships that LUD, for example, has developed there, we have a great opportunity to be an example and be a leader as a neighborhood that can make a positive influence, not just for the benefit of Elizabeth, but for all of Charlotte. And I think that might sound kind of bold, but I think we really have that opportunity in the coming months and years, and it is going to be probably years, to really step up and do great work there. And with that, I will close, and I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, West. Wow, I think this organization is in great hands with you as president. I was thrilled and shocked when you agreed to be nominated. But boy, is it the right move for our neighborhood and for our city. So I really believe in you, and I'm excited about being your past president. So ask away. And with that, I believe, well, first of all, I want to thank Jason Graffis so much. Jason, you have really helped us make this better than we thought it could be. You took a real load off of West and relieved my anxiety hugely. And thank you. I've really enjoyed working with you on this as I enjoy working with you on everything. So thank you so much.
Yep, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. And with that, I believe, Eric, you have a motion.
Yeah, for all you guys that stuck till the bitter end, we got some housekeeping here to do to leave the meeting open to allow the voting. So I move that this meeting stand in recess until 5 p.m. on October 2nd, 2021, and for the meeting to be adjourned at that time.
Second.
I'd like to second that motion. This is Evan.
Thank you, Evan. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And with that, we will stand in recess until 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 2nd, at which time we will adjourn. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Really appreciate everyone from the community who stuck with us, attended, asked questions. It's great to live in this neighborhood with all of you and to serve with all of you. Good night.